Hey, Jeremy, how you doing?
Great, Stephen. How are you?
Doing awesome. This week on Inside Microsoft Teams, we're doing a show on demos, and I can think of no better person to do it with me. You up for doing a cool show on Teams demos?
Yes, totally. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
I'm Microsoft teaming with Microsoft Teams. I'm learning and dreaming with Microsoft Teams. The hub and the teamwork of Microsoft 365 in these quarantine times. I'm Microsoft teaming with Microsoft Teams. Yeah, with Microsoft Teams.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Stephen Rose, your host of Inside Microsoft Teams, and welcome to Season 4. I would be remiss if I didn't take a minute and just thank everybody for all of your support last season, for all of you who, messaged me on Twitter and on LinkedIn who said, I love the show, everything's great, awesome, love that. But one of the things I did hear back was, I want to see more demos, and I couldn't agree with you more. So I can think of no better demo person than Jeremy Chapman. So I've asked him here to join us today. Jeremy, if you don't know, is the host of Microsoft Mechanics, aka Microsoft Garage, aka The Garage, aka we worked together for many years in Windows and did demos there, and sort of the father of the runtime installer for Office. Did I leave anything out, Jeremy?
Oh, all of the imaging stuff.
Click to run
before Office. Yes, it's been a long time. We actually worked together on Windows 7, if you can remember back in those days. In fact, I remember the first day I think you were on campus, talking to you about all the things you were going to do and all of your plans. So it's been great working with you till now and catching up now inside of Microsoft Teams.
You were part of my interview loop. So that was actually the first time I met you. I wasn't even an employee yet. But yeah, you were key when we did our going from XP to Windows 7 and Windows 7 to Windows 8 demos. You were huge in really creating a great way that we could image laptops. And you've taken so much of that forward. And the Mechanics show is great. Take a minute and talk about the Mechanics show and kind of what you do for those folks who may not be familiar with it.
Yeah, so the Mechanics, it's got a great history to it. We actually started out, as you mentioned, with Office Click to Run and Office 365 Pro Plus. A lot of kind of FUD in those days about how it worked, and we wanted to explain. I remember we did some really great stuff how it worked offline. So, for example, we had some great stunts that we would do, where like people would jump out of an airplane and install Office while skydiving to show it worked offline. We filmed ourselves in the bayou and showed it in the desert, where we had no signal or no internet connectivity, just to prove that the clients would work. And then from there, we expanded out to the rest of Office 365, and then we went broader to Azure and to Surface and then to Windows topics. And now basically with Mechanics, we cover anything that's commercial. So anything outside of Xbox is fair game for us on Microsoft Mechanics. You can get to that by going to Microsoft.com/mechanics. Basically, any of the topics that we cover, we've got everything from Windows 365, one of my current favorites, all the way down to stuff with Microsoft Teams and some of the optimizations you can do there, Azure Migrate, a lot of the really important things for IT, especially to really get up to speed and learn how to do some very important tasks, and also any announcements that we want to do the double click on. That's what Mechanics is all about.
Yep, and it's all 300-400 level content for IT pros, so it's great. If you're really wanting to understand what are some of the best practices, how do I do this, how should I take a look at it, this is one of the great places to start, and really helps to support the work we're doing on Docs and MS Learn. So let's talk about Teams, and I think one of the top questions that I get all the time is, I have bandwidth issues, I'm concerned about this and that. What is one of the best ways that folks can conserve bandwidth and really get the best experience when they are presenting?
Yeah, so there's so much that you can do in terms of using what we call, basically PowerPoint Live integration with Teams. I think one of the major consumers of bandwidth, and here I'm actually logged in as a demo persona in a Teams call. One of the things that people do just kind of by default, it's almost muscle memory, is sharing your entire screen. But that's basically going to be painting and sending bitmaps or other image types over the wire, and it can get expensive from a bandwidth perspective. And think about if you've got a 4K monitor or anything larger, and also think about the the text sizes, all of those things if you want people to see your content. So one of the great things that you can do just as a kind of a default for demoing and showing your presentations is sharing directly from PowerPoint and the file itself. So here I've got a PowerPoint, and it's got an intro to our favorite Mark 8 drone. And what's going to happen is it's going to actually give me the full view of the presentation in the presenter view. The nice thing though here is I'm not sharing the screen. So there it is. And if I want to, I can let the audience or the other participants in the meeting skip ahead. They can view the content, or conversely, I can also make sure that they only see the slides that I'm sharing. And that way we're actually saving a ton of bandwidth, because basically what's happening is this PowerPoint deck is caching down to the attendee's device, and it's not painting every single screen. And that way they're kind of viewing it locally, from PowerPoint Live, or basically the same PowerPoint on the web code in the background. And the nice thing now too with the integrated presenter view is that I can see all my speaker notes if I have them. I can see here I've got no speaker notes in this case, but it works as if I was in PowerPoint in the rich client backstage. And here's where, if I want to, I can prevent participants from moving through other slides.
So on their end, they're only seeing the one slide. And I did want to say really quick, the other way that you can launch this is when you're in PowerPoint, you will see a button that says Present in Teams. And if you hit that button in PowerPoint, it is the same as preloading up your presentation and going the route that Jeremy showed. So there's really two different ways to get to this point.
And one other thing that I'm excited about, because we do a ton of demos, like you said. A lot of the demos, just for practicality purposes, we might have a lot of things that might take a dozen VMs or something in Azure. So we pre-record, demos occasionally. And one of the great things that you can do is actually share video through PowerPoint. So here, as an attendee, you're going to be able to get that video to basically stream directly from OneDrive, so that you can see what's happening in real time. And that way, again, it's not doing the screen share, but let's say you're presenting maybe a webinar, or you're doing something that requires a lot of product demos. Maybe you just want to share a video itself with audio, and that will work too. That's something that you can do straight, from this presentation mode. Another really cool thing that you can do now, and I'm not showing it in the context of this tenant because it's kind of like Inception. I've got this Aaron Painter demo persona in a different Teams meeting, as well as the one that we're running. But now we actually have the ability to do this different standout mode, to where I can actually overlay an image of myself on the Teams meeting. So let me go ahead and show you what that looks like in my preview. So this gives you the ability to kind of stay connected with your audience and share your screen, or share just the PowerPoint, and be able to continue that eye contact and make sure that you connect with anybody that you're presenting to. And all of this is just powered by what you can do natively inside of Microsoft Teams. And the great thing is, you can see I don't have a green screen or any of that kind of material, and it's just working, and it's all kind of the image processing and AI and different components that are taking care of that for me.
Oh, it's awesome. Go back to slide 2 for a second, because I want to show another feature that we just announced this week. It's the translate feature. And by going to More Action, Translate Slide, and here we're picking Dutch, I can translate the slide just for me into my preferred language. And both end users and presenters can do this, but it only affects them. It's awesome. So I think the other thing I want to show is this one, this call health. This is something that maybe not everybody has realized. I'm going to zoom in, but every 15 seconds it goes out and it takes a look at things like round trip time and audio rates and video. This is great if you're going, hey, is it me? Is it them? Or if you're an IT manager and you're trying to find out why somebody keeps going, hey, my calls keep dropping, and you can go, look, it looks like you're not plugged in, or you need a little bit more bandwidth, or you need to turn everything else off. So it's a great way to be able to troubleshoot some of this stuff out.
This has been great. I gotta say, sorry to interrupt, but
no,
the last year with the pandemic, we've been filming in our studio with people remotely presenting through our Surface Hub device. And sometimes the service is under heavy load, or it's got various things going on, whether that's from the presenter side or not.
Yeah.
And now with that call quality, we can actually kind of isolate what those issues might be. And a lot of times it is the upload speed on the presenter side, and then sometimes that means that we just request for them to get an Ethernet connection and re-record a bit later, effectively, to be able to correct some of those issues. So that's been super helpful, especially as a lot of us have been working from home or working hybrid in the last few months.
So if somebody misses a meeting, we know the meetings can be recorded and dropped down and streamed, but what else are we doing to make it easier for someone to get caught up? I know you're a big fan of transcription, so why don't you take a moment and share why that is such a great feature for folks?
Yeah, so the transcription that we have inside of Teams has also been really life-changing for me, because all of the different meetings that we have, especially as we're building out mechanics content, we're sometimes balancing multiple different topics, bouncing from, say, Azure to Surface to Windows back to Microsoft 365 stuff. So having the ability to create transcriptions has been super key for us. So the easiest way to do it, you just go ahead and click on the ellipse while you're in the call. You can start the transcription, and this augments the recording as well. The nice thing is that will actually kick off a speech to text transcription. It's all using AI. It's going to pop up here on the right hand side here, and it's very precise also in terms of the speech to text. It's gotten really a lot better, especially over the last couple of years, as we've seen kind of the speech recognition and those technologies improve. And the nice thing you can see here with your it's actually got the it's got the speaker attribution to it as well. And the cool thing, if I stop the transcription, and I'll go ahead and do that, and it gives me a nice notice that I'm transcribing so that everybody knows. But I can go ahead and stop it. And the nice thing here, once we stop it, this is actually saving to the group inbox effectively for this particular meeting. And when that's done, it's going to actually create the transcript itself as a document that you can review later. You can download it if you need to, or just review it as part of your meeting chat. So you always have a way to get back to your notes. So even though it's not kind of a one-for-one replacement with the note-taking functionality, it's also quite good in Microsoft Teams. This is something that lets you just get back into that same headspace you were in, for that last meeting that might have been a week ago or 2 weeks ago, to really help refer back to those topics that you need to follow up on.
Well, it's also great if you, like I said, if you miss that meeting, that you can go in and you can search for your name or specific topics and be able to find them. Or if there was so much going on, sometimes just reading through and making sure it was clear, or going back to somebody saying, hey, I went to the meeting, I did transcription, here's exactly what we said, so where did I miss or get confused? So it's a great CYA in some ways, to make sure that you have that. Another question that I get an absolute ton is walk me through the difference between meetings and live events and what that is. So here's what I thought I would do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share here. And hey, I'm logged in as Aaron Painter, and I'm going to go to Aaron's calendar. Now let me take a moment and talk about the difference between these three. So a meeting, that's up to 20,000 people. There's no registration. That can be internal, external. That's the meetings that you're used to doing in Teams or that you used to do in Skype. Now, webinars are a little bit different. Webinars, you can have up to 1,000 people. You can make it view only. We can control the interaction. So the idea is it's you or several presenters presenting to a group of people, and those people asking questions and giving feedback. So we can specify presenters, but it also supports registration. So I can go to webinar here, and what we'll see is I can add the title for it. I can choose if it repeats. I can add the location. But the first thing it's going to say up here at the top is, do you want to view your registration form? So if I click yes, which I would like to do, and I will log in here as Aaron, it's going to bring up that registration. And what's cool is I can add all of these different fields. So I could say, you know what, I want to know what organization they're from. I can even make it required. I can make job title required, and even choose a custom question if I had created a series of custom questions. That can either be an input or a choice. I can upload an image up here at the top, add a title, pick it, and basically create my page that I'm going to send everybody to register, and be able to copy a registration link that I can now see and send it out to everybody and say, hey, we're doing a cool webinar on Teams. Here's all the information that you need, and we're ready to go. So that's really great that we can do that. And again, like you would think about when you go to a webinar where you're training somebody and kind of walking through how to do stuff, that's really what we're looking at and what we're looking to do. Now, the last one, and there's often a lot of confusion on this, is a live event. So I'll go up here to live event. Now, a live event is, think of like a keynote. It's me presenting to a lot of people, but I'm not answering Q&A with those folks. I may have moderators that are in there doing it, but I'm not going to directly engage with the audience. We can support up to 20,000 people. That can go as long as 4 hours. We do support both external presenters and external producers, because then you get into a preview and live. What is everybody seeing? What do you have queued up and ready to go? We support live captions. We support subtitles. We support, the advanced production technologies, which allows you to use tools like OBS or things along that line. And we get a post-broadcast attendance report. Once again,
just,
you can
just to add one more thing, you can do real-time chat. So the difference here is that there's a bit of a time delay, kind of by design, because it's a one group or one team out to other attendees that are on, but they can actually go in and through Q&A ask their questions. There's a bit of a delay to it that you get, that you're going to see from the audience, but as the person who's running the meeting, they see that straight away in the live event. And that way you do have a bit of interaction, but it's not one of those cases where you've got maybe camera feeds or audio feeds coming in real time from external attendees.
So what I want to do now is I want to dig into the admin console, because that's where we get a lot of questions on stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and put Aaron Painter over here to the right, and we'll start up here on dashboard. And I want to take like the next 10 minutes and kind of go through this. So let's start with, and let me go ahead and pop that out so we see that fully. Let's go through and talk about each one of these. So why don't we just go back and forth? Do you want to start with manage teams?
Yeah, so there's some really great stuff now in managing teams. So as you can expect, all the different teams that are active in your organization are visible here. And the great thing is you can now see things like if there are classification labels or other things as part of that team. If you define things that are maybe that should be confidential or secret in some way. You can also see which channels are private versus public and those types of things. So you can do some really great maintenance, governance controls against them, and also see what activity is on each of these teams. So that way you've got a great view kind of in one place of all the different places that you need to be active in terms of your management.
Excellent. Teams policies, this is basically saying, this is my global org-wide default, and then you can have sub-policies like I've created here for first-line workers, which tells us that it is a custom policy that we've created. It's not the standard. And if you're allowed to have private channels within that group as well. And if we go in and edit, you can see here's the description, private channels are on. And then I can also see the group policies that have been assigned and the group email, which can be important if you're looking to set up devices or things based upon that, or mailboxes. Our update policies is where we can see if they will get pre-release or preview features. So we could see, for example, that my frontline workers, I have not enabled any of the preview features. They won't get any features till they're GA. But yet for everybody else or for a specific group, maybe like IT or my insiders, I can say to go ahead and follow that Office preview and go through that. Why don't you talk a little bit about team templates? Because this is a really great place to start for those folks who are going, I want to, create a more custom experience in Teams and really don't know where to start.
Yeah, so the great thing is here with the templates, you can basically create or pre-build different templates that have different capabilities to them. So, for example, we've been working with a lot of different industries to pre-build templatized teams effectively that have the right content in them, the right channels assigned to them, kind of out of the gates. And the nice thing is you can take these as a baseline, so you can use them as a starting point and save a ton of time, and then customize them. Or you can also create your own templates. If you're, say, building a team, every time you create a new project, maybe if you're in a sales org, every time you sell project-based services to a customer, you can then roll it out with these templates. It just saves you a bunch of time to be able to quickly spin up and provision new teams.
Yeah, absolutely. We can see here I did one for frontline workers. I've added roadmap. These are the apps that are going to be available to them, so I've limited that. And then we also have some template policies that you can also use, which also click back to that. So let's take a look at users. That's really our next area. And that is our place to take a look at every user that we have. This is important if I want to take a look at things like call quality for the past few days. What if I want to reset a PIN number, if I want to know what their default toll or calling number is, if I want to have calls forwarded to somebody else. I can also take a look at all the meetings and calls, but most importantly, I can see all the policies that are applied to that person, which is really great. And if I click on details, it'll actually tell me which policies are applied directly to the users and how they're inheriting them for different groups, so that you're making sure that if they're part of your global org, but also part of a smaller group, which one's overriding which? And if they can't get to something, is that secondary policy overriding the first one? And that could really create some issues for you. We were going to go down to some meeting policies and meeting settings. So you want to take that one, Jeremy?
Yeah, so the great thing with meeting policies and settings, you can customize, again, the experience that different roles potentially have or different regions. So you can see here, there's some great things like being able to turn on different buttons like the Meet Now button on top, or allow in-channel meeting scheduling, those types of things. That transcription capability that I showed you earlier, maybe that for some different conversations, that's not a great idea. Think of a research and development team or attorney-client privilege, any of those kind of things where it might not be something that you'll want to transcribe.
HIPAA compliance.
You'll have individual rights to be able to turn those on and off. Same thing with cloud recording. These are all, again, giving you a lot of granular control to really cater the exact meeting policy experience that you can then assign at a group or at an individual level to make sure that the meetings comply with your governance and your compliance controls and your industry that you're in.
Yep, here's things like NDI sharing, which I get asked all the time, allow PowerPoint sharing, whiteboard, shared notes. You can even do where you can only allow background blur and not other types of images, and also not to let anonymous people be able to start meetings or not allow people to be able to bypass the lobby. All of these are really important settings and ones that you should really think about and have different ones for both private and public groups. We can pick whether or not anonymous users can even join meetings. We can turn that off, or anonymous users can interact with apps and meetings. Our live event policies, we talked about live events, so we can take a look at what those policies are, as well as the settings for that. Messaging policies, also very much the same, picking who can edit, delete, send messages, if you want to allow things like Giphies and what sort of content rating you want to allow. If you want it to be pretty strict or pretty much moderate, if you want to allow memes, URL previews for safety purposes, translate messages. If you wanted to turn that off for some reason, you could. So all of that is here. And when you think about chat amongst folks and all the things that they do in chat, this is where you're going to see all of that and where that all starts to come in. Jeremy, why don't you kind of take us through the apps?
Right. So one of the great things with apps inside of Teams and the usage of Teams itself is if you're writing apps, Teams is a great canvas to really not only integrate your apps with, but also promote them. So you can see here I can curate with Manage Apps the different apps that are available to people. It's going to be on their left nav when they actually choose to add an app. The great thing also with app permission policies, we can kind of see what apps are allowed if we want to. Third-party or Microsoft-only apps, if we want to block certain app types, that's all stuff that we can set. One of the cool things, if we go into setup policies by different user role or by region or by group, we can customize the experience. One of the cool things with pinned apps here that you're showing, this is for frontline workers. So, for example, they're going to be using their mobile phones. That's going to be in their app tray. They'll see things like walkie-talkie, shifts, different capabilities for them. But if you say we're to hop back up into kind of the global default rule for the policies, then you can also do things like, and this has been a cool capability. If you want to get your intranet seen, or you want to be able to use things like Insights, brand new kind of Viva technologies that we're doing for really creating a nice balanced work-life environment. You can have those appear on the left nav. You can move them up and down. Like one of the things I have on my personal teams is the Microsoft intranet is there, Insights is there on the left. So you can not only add these to people's experiences, but this also helps drive discoverability. Because one of the hardest things, and I've worked in IT and I've built some amazing services in my previous life. It's great to build something, but then to get people to find it and to use it is a whole nother challenge. So this really helps in terms of putting it right there front and center in an app that you use every single day to really get most of their work done.
Absolutely. And then, of course, we can customize that app store and add our own information to it. Policy packages is also a great place. If you don't know where to start, we really encourage you to check it out, like healthcare, where there is so much HIPAA compliancy that you have to be aware of. This goes through and it's actually built out. Here's a best practice messaging policy, meeting policy, and app policy, and we can see things which are on and which are off as we start to look through this. What about meetings? And we'll see that things like allow meeting registration is off, and different things within here. So if you're not sure where to start, check out these. these are really great, and also group package assignments, which you can also set up for that.
I was going to say, the great thing about policies is that you can assign them from the policy itself to the groups or the individuals that you want to assign to, or you can go into the individuals. So like you mentioned earlier on the users tab, maybe there's policy conflicts. Anybody who's worked with group policy in the past will know the policy conflict conundrum that we have sometimes when you're in multiple different groups. These are all things that you can troubleshoot as part of, say, a call with a user if they're, some of the things aren't working out quite right from a policy perspective. So you've got multiple different entry points to assign those policies. And obviously for all of this stuff, it's all enabled through PowerShell. So if you want to do bulk assignment, all of that is scriptable as well, pretty much for everything that we've shown today.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 more. Usage reports is also great, where we can select a report. We could take a look at apps usage or Teams device usage or just Teams usage in general over the last 7 days, run a report. Now, this is a demo tenant, so there's not going to be a lot here, but we can see, which teams are active, which channels, who's, doing a lot back and forth, who really isn't. And that's really great. And then last, but certainly not least, in level of importance, is our org-wide settings. Jeremy, I'd love for you to take a moment and talk about external access and guest access, because now we have really 2 ways to do that, either Azure B2B or Microsoft Connect.
Yeah, so there's some really great options here. So normally when you have different guest access, obviously there are ways to do this to where the user kind of signs out of their active tenant and then signs in as a guest to their partner tenant effectively. Now with Connect, you'll be able to actually have access to just individual teams or channels that you should have access to without leaving the context of your logged in profile in your own company. So this really opens up a lot, better user experience. You don't have to move in and out of different profiles effectively to be able to do this. And it gives you just additional collaboration options to be able to work with your best partners, giving you that kind of shared channel, and that connected experience between 2 organizations. Once you've set that up as an admin, and of course you've got full control based on, again, which organizations you want to partner with, which ones you want to allow. If you want to block certain organizations, that's all in your control as to what you permit.
Yep. And then for guests when they come in, if they're allowed to share video, use chat, Giphies, all that sort of stuff, you can choose where that's at. And then for team settings, we can also suggest what feeds pop up, who manages those teams, if they're going to create tags and suggestion tags, that's all there, where they can store files and where they're not allowed to store files, creating content pins, role-based chat permissions are all here as we look to set that. So all of this is really important and things that you should sit down and really sort of talk about what is the best way to put that together as you start to kind of build that out and as you kind of start to do it.
There's one other thing I wanted to show actually as part of sharing, because if you do a lot of video work, and I know that you and I doing these kind of podcasts and other recordings, sharing system audio or sharing the computer sound with others that are in the meeting is super important. It's one of the things that we've seen a ton of activity on. And so this button here, include computer sound, if you wanted to say play a video, and I'll go ahead and play this one. But
so if this is running on the cloud,
ability
can you still get
to share that computer sound with other people in your audience? I know a lot of people, even though it's kind of a control that's right there that you see every day when you're sharing your screen.
Right.
It's one of those things that not everybody finds. So super important to know about and super important to integrate as part of your video sharing flow that I know that you and I do a lot, Stephen.
Yeah. Jeremy, believe it or not, that is like time. We have blown through all the time we had. But what are your kind of final thoughts for folks here? And, with your experience, what are 2 or 3 things that folks should really kind of keep in mind as they're going back and retaking a look at how they set up teams at the beginning of the pandemic and are really trying to get things ready for hybrid work as folks start to come back?
Yeah, so there's a lot of considerations, especially I think the integration with the room systems, the meeting rooms that you have as people are starting to do more hybrid work from the office, from home. I think, a lot of people have really invested in a lot of kit at home where they've got multiple monitors, they've got, mirrorless cameras set up, all of this stuff. Use it, do all of those things to make sure that you can stay as connected as possible with folks. And then I think some of the teams, the room systems that we have for meeting rooms, those are things that you should look into to really make it not feel like you're disconnected from the people that happen to be in the room, and that it's a great experience really for anyone who's on those Teams meetings.
So Jeremy, two big sites for you is aka.ms/Microsoft Teams for IT, and the other one, aka.ms/Microsoft Mechanics. Great stuff, and you're showing here there are Microsoft Mechanics Teams Essentials. Really good, deep dive stuff, really goes into everything we talked about today, and then more.
Yeah, so we've got great channel on YouTube at Microsoft Mechanics. If you search for Microsoft Mechanics, you'll find it. You can also go to microsoft.com/mechanics. We also have our own channels on Twitter. We also have a following on LinkedIn. In the comments in YouTube or in Twitter, I'll be there. We look at all of those. So any of your feedback is welcomed. Any topics, any things that you'd like to see, let us know. Anything that you have questions on, we reach out with any of the questions that we get with our subject matter experts to really respond to those. One example of that was with Windows 365 and all of Scott Manchester's team. There were like 600 plus questions from the audience, and so we answered all of those as part of posting our content on Microsoft Mechanics channel. So encourage you to check everything out, and also if you've got questions, just reach out.
Yeah. First of all, Jeremy, thanks for taking time out of your day, and everybody make sure to check out that Mechanics series. Thanks for tuning in. I want to thank everybody, including my production staff. Our next show, I am excited to have Brian Hash. Brian Hash is the project lead for a variety of Teams and other software projects, and he will dig into change management and how he's been able to get companies to switch over and not just adopt new software, but really use it. And he'll share his tips and tricks behind that. So great show coming up next. I appreciate it, and we'll see you soon on our next episode of Inside Microsoft Teams. All right, let's do it. Cut! And then we go to the intro.